Marta found the Saxon secretary in the kitchen garden, sitting on an overturned crate behind the root cellar where the wind could not reach him. His name was Peter Wenger, and he was younger than she had first assumed, perhaps 25, with ink-stained fingers and the hollow look of a man who had not slept well in weeks. His leather portfolio lay across his knees, and he was staring at nothing. She had spent the walk back from the cave deciding how to approach him. Felix's words circled in her mind, the only weapon that does not feed the thing below. Truth. But truth required a door to walk through, and Marta needed Wenger to open it. "Herr Wenger," she said in German. His head came up, startled. "May I sit?" He gestured vaguely at another crate. She sat. "You are Lord Kowalski's daughter, the translator." "Marta, you speak German as well as Latin, and Polish and some French. Languages come easily to me, answers do not." She let the silence breathe for a moment. In the distance, a crow called from the bare orchard. "Herr Wenger, I want to ask you about the courier who arrived this morning." His fingers tightened on the portfolio. "I have nothing to say about that." "Then let me say what I have noticed, and you can tell me if I am wrong." She kept her voice low and even, the way she spoke to frightened animals. "The courier came from the south. Dispatches from Sandomier's take 4 days by fast horse. He arrived in 2. He bypassed our household entirely and went directly to Baron Lindqvist's officers, as though he had been instructed to deliver the news in the most damaging way possible, in front of Count von Dessau." Wenger said nothing. His jaw worked. "My father noticed the timing. I noticed something else. When Lindqvist read the dispatch aloud, you stopped writing. Not because you were shocked, you stopped writing before he spoke. You already knew what was in those papers." The silence stretched. A thin serpent, dark as old iron, slid across the flagstones near the cellar door. Wenger flinched and pulled his feet up onto the crate. "They are everywhere now," he said. "The snakes. One was in my bed this morning, coiled on the pillow. It did not bite, it simply watched me." "Herr Wenger, the courier." He exhaled through his nose, a long, ragged sound. "The dispatch was real. The villages were burned. That is the truth, and I will not diminish it." "I am not asking you to diminish it. I am asking who sent the courier here, and why now." Wenger opened his portfolio, then closed it again. His hands were trembling. "There is a man in the Saxon command, not military advisory. He arrived in Count von Dessau's retinue but answers to no one in it. He speaks to messengers in private. He writes letters that the Count never sees." Wenger paused. "I tried to read one of those letters 3 nights ago. It was written in no script I have ever encountered." Marta's stomach dropped. "Describe it." "Spirals, curves that loop into themselves, like the patterns frost makes on glass, but deliberate, intentional." He looked at her with reddened eyes. "I am a secretary, Fräulein Kowalski. I have studied Latin, Greek, Hebrew, some Arabic. I have seen Cyrillic and Armenian and Georgian. This was none of those. And the ink was wrong, too dark. It caught light strangely, as though it were thicker than ink should be. The carvings in the cave. The same spiraling script that covered the passage walls, the same impossible precision." "This man," Marta said carefully, "what is his name?" "He calls himself Dr. Brandt, but that is not his name. I have served in Saxon diplomatic households for 3 years, and I have never encountered him before this journey. He appeared in our party the morning we departed for your estate, as though he had simply materialized from the road." "What does he look like?" Wenger frowned, and the frown deepened into something confused. That is the strange thing. I have been in his presence a dozen times. I cannot clearly recall his face. It shifts in my memory. Thin, I think. Pale. He wears a dark coat, but the details slide away when I try to hold them. Another serpent emerged from beneath the cellar door, thicker than the first, its scales catching the gray light with a copper sheen. It moved toward Marta and stopped a foot from her boot, raising its head. She did not flinch. After the cave, after the chasm and the watching eyes, a single viper held no terror for her. "What did Dr. Brandt do with the courier?" she asked. "He met the writer outside the estate at dawn." "I saw them from my window. Brandt handed something to the courier, a folded paper. Then the writer went directly to the Swedish stable block. Not to Count von Dessau. Not to our own delegation. To the Swedes." Wenger's voice cracked. "I should have told the Count immediately. But when I tried to form the words, I could not. It was as though something pressed against my mind and said, 'Wait, be patient, say nothing.' And the feeling was so reasonable, so calm, that I obeyed it." Marta recognized the description. The pressure she had felt at the chasm's edge, the thing that reached into your thoughts and rearranged your impulses, turning patience into paralysis, caution into silence. "It was not your fault," she said. "That impulse to stay quiet, it came from outside you." "How can you possibly know that?" "Because I have felt it too." She stood. The serpent at her feet turned its head to track her movement, then slid unhurriedly toward the garden wall. "Herr Wenger, I need you to do something difficult. I need you to tell Count von Dessau about Brandt, everything you just told me." Wenger's face went white. "If I accuse a member of the Count's own party of sabotage, without proof." "You have proof. You saw the meeting with the courier. You saw the letter in an unknown script. You know the dispatch was redirected to the Swedish delegation deliberately to destroy these talks. It is my word against his, and he is." Wenger stopped. "There is something wrong with him, Fräulein, something I cannot name. When he enters a room, the temperature drops. The other night I passed his door and heard him speaking to someone inside, but when I checked the guest registry, he was quartered alone. And the voice that answered him was not. It was not a human voice. It was too low. It rose from the floor rather than the air." Marta's skin prickled. His influence leaks upward, not as commands, as tendencies. But what if it was more than tendencies now? What if the widening chasm had granted something more direct, a conduit, a mouth, a way to speak to an agent already placed among the diplomats? "All the more reason to speak," she said. "Honestly, even if it costs you." "It will cost me my position. And silence will cost more than that, not just for you." Wenger stared at her. She could see the war behind his eyes, self-preservation against conscience, the comfortable lie against the dangerous truth. She did not push further. Felix had said the choice must be free. At last he said, very quietly, "I will think about it." It was not enough, but it was not nothing. Marta left him in the kitchen garden and crossed the courtyard. The afternoon had darkened prematurely, the sky pressing low and gray. Serpents moved openly now across the flagstones and along the base of the manor walls. Small vipers, large vipers, species she could not identify, all flowing in the same direction. East, toward the hills. A maid screamed inside the house. Marta heard the crash of dropped crockery, then shouting. She pushed through the kitchen door and found 3 servants backed against the wall, staring at the hearth. A knot of serpents, 6, 8, perhaps 10, had emerged from the fireplace itself, sliding out between the hot stones as though the fire were nothing. They dispersed across the kitchen floor in smooth, radiating lines, and the largest coiled itself around the leg of the table, where bread dough sat rising. "Do not harm them," Marta said sharply, surprising herself. The words came from instinct she could not explain. "Leave them alone. They will not bite if you do not corner them." The cook, a stout woman named Basia, crossed herself. "It is the devil's work." "It is not the devil." Marta did not know how to explain what it actually was, so she said nothing more. She helped guide the servants out of the kitchen through the far door, leaving the serpents to their silent occupation. She found her father in the great hall, standing at the window. He was watching the courtyard, where the Swedish officers had discovered the serpents and were reacting with considerably less composure than the kitchen staff. "Lindqvist's men want to leave," her father said without turning. "They say the estate is cursed." If they leave, the talks are finished. The talks may already be finished, Marta. No. She came to stand beside him. Through the glass she could see frost spirals spreading across every window of the manor, and beyond the courtyard, the eastern hills were wreathed in a faint luminous haze that had no business existing in a Polish winter. Father, the courier this morning. It was arranged. Someone in von Dessau's party redirected the dispatch to the Swedes deliberately. A man called Dr. Brandt. Her father turned. How do you know this? His secretary told me. Wenger. He saw Brandt meet the courier at dawn and hand him instructions. Why would someone in the Saxon delegation sabotage their own negotiations? Because the negotiations are not the point. The conflict is the point. Something needs these talks to fail, needs the hatred and the broken promises and the contempt. It feeds on it. She heard how it sounded even as she said it. Madness. The ravings of a girl who had spent too much time in dark caves reading Old Greek, but her father had seen the fire bend. He had felt the vibrations. He knew. He was quiet for a long time. Outside, a serpent as long as a man's arm crossed the courtyard in full view of both delegations' men, and no one moved to kill it. They simply watched, frozen by something deeper than revulsion. Bring Wenger to me, her father said. If what he says is true, we present it to both envoys together. Openly. No tricks, no leverage, just the truth about the sabotage. Lindqvist will claim it proves Saxon treachery. Unless we show him that the treachery served neither Saxon nor Swedish interests, that it served only chaos. Her father's hand found her shoulder, his grip tighter than the night before. You said something feeds on this. I do not pretend to understand what you mean, but I understand sabotage, and I understand that men who discover they share an enemy sometimes stop being enemies themselves. It was, Marta realized, the most hope anyone had offered her in days. She went to find Wenger. The kitchen garden was empty, his crate overturned, the portfolio gone. She searched the guest quarters, the stables, the chapel. Nothing. A servant told her he had seen the Saxon secretary walking east along the road toward the hills an hour ago, clutching his portfolio and muttering. East, toward the cave. Marta grabbed her cloak. The hum was louder now, a presence in every stone and beam of the manor, and when she stepped outside, the ground beneath her boots was warm even through the snow. The serpents parted for her as she crossed the courtyard, flowing aside with that same unhurried deference they had shown in the chamber below. She ran.